Okay, so while we wait for a few others to join us, I am going to ask that everyone who is here waiting, you'll see a link that I just put in the chat, and it's for the page that we're looking at right now. This is the member portal. So this is the home page for the CBE movement. But of course, we want everyone to join the movement. And when you join the movement, you're asked to create a free account. Okay. And once you become a member of the movement, then you can go to the member portal and you can click on the role that is applicable to you. So if you're a teacher from birth to 12th grade educator or an administrator, then you would click on this one that says birth to 12 educators. And so once you are in the portal for educators, the first thing that you're going to see is an inventory form. And so I'm asking for all educators K to 12, so not the secondary. I know we have some secondary, post-secondary, higher ed educators in here as well, but this is for, as you can see, kindergarten through 12th grade. And so I'm asking that every educator, please complete this inventory form so that we can best meet your needs. Now, if you are a community partner, you will select the middle one. And as soon as you get into the member portal for community partners, you will also see you'll see a form for yourselves. And so this is a form for you to complete and share with us information that can help us to be able to match you with ideal educators and students so that you can support. And you can also let us know the support that you need as a member of the community-based education movement. And last, but certainly really first, are students. And so any students who are a part of the movement, you can access the member portal for students, and you'll also be able to enter information about yourself. All right. And let us know what your needs are, what your goals are, what your desires are. And that will allow us. The goal of the member portal is ultimately for people to be able to collaborate with each other, for people to be able to um, learn with each other. The goal of to be able to be engaged in community. That is the point of community-based education, is for education to be grounded in community. So I just wanted to take a moment to make sure that everyone is aware of the member portal, and also to ask everyone to please join the member portal, join the movement, and not only join the movement, but take the inventory, complete the inventory forms that are part of the portal, depending on what your role is in the movement. All right, this is important information. This allows us to be able to grow and expand. It allows us to be able to support everyone in the community with elevating and raising the child in the village together. So we do have our school. Armala is here. So good day, great day, Armala. How are you? She may be still having a little bit of Wi-Fi connectivity issues, but I do see her here. So we are going to get started. I want to just first say good morning. Here in New York City is morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. It is an honor to be able to connect with the very first set of international schools that are joining the community-based education movement. It is so exciting to be able to know that students in Africa are going to be engaging in a community advocacy project. My name is Dr. Ife Akinshaye Damon, and I am the founder and CEO of the community-based education movement. And we also have here in the Zoom the Chief Operations Officer of the Community-Based Education Movement, the COO, and that is Jahi Knox. Jahi, would you like to say anything? Jahi's a, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Definitely am blessed to be here today and appreciate everyone for, taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this training. As you will see, Dr. Ife has taken very key moments and opportunities within her time as being an educator to formulate a vision that is worldwide and so expansive and inclusive that we all can benefit from it. And so I look forward to everyone being able to do such in this training, definitely.
Thank you so much, Jahi. Thank you. All right. So without any further ado, we are going to get started. Okay. Um, with the training. All right. I just want to make sure I took a few notes to make sure that I don't skip anything. All right. So I have asked all of the participants to complete the inventory form in the members portal. I am going to, because of technical difficulties, I'm just going to ask if all participants can share your name, your title, and your organization in the chat. So just for the sake of time, okay? And the way that we'll do this training today is that I'm going to go through the curriculum. And so I'm going to ask if everyone can keep their mics muted while I go through the curriculum. And then I will open up the floor for questions after I have gone through everything. So if you do notice that you have questions, please make note of them. Please write them down. Or if you're on your phone, please, um, create a draft with questions that you can ask after I have gone through the curriculum. Okay. And I think that that's everything that I want to share before I get started. All right. So this is a licensed curriculum, which means that this curriculum is given to those who have signed a licensing agreement. And once you sign the licensing, and it's specifically for the K to 12 schools, this is a curriculum that's designed for children in primary and secondary school. And so educators of those students, and educators can be the classroom teacher, it could be the principals, the administrators, it could also be a guidance counselor, but people who serve youth in the K to 12 setting, um, they can gain access on behalf of the school. And once they do sign the licensing agreement, complete the licensing agreement, then they then get access to this licensed curriculum that is in the that's you'll get access to it. So it is online. You'll get the link. Um, and the terms of the licensing agreement, I will not go over here, but you have to abide by those terms. So I just want to express that first. So this document that you'll be seeing today will be accessible to educators who have agreed to the terms and conditions for using this licensed curriculum. All right, community partners, I will also share an image, a document that shows the role of a community partner throughout this process, the role of the student throughout this process, and the role of the educator throughout this process. But we're going to talk about the process now. All right. So I'm going to read a few things. I don't always like to have to read everything, but in this instance, it is important for me to make sure that certain things are read. This licensed curriculum, well, first of all, this is the 2025 Community-Based Education Community Advocacy Project Curriculum. All right, so this is certified curriculum under the trademarked Community-Based Education Movement. This licensed curriculum is designed to help students through the process of completing the community-based education movement certified community advocacy project. Users of this curriculum must adhere to the guidelines as listed in the licensing agreement with CBE Consulting. All students, educators, and community partners who engage in the community based education movement certified community advocacy project are required to complete the applicable inventory forms at cbemovement.com/TCBEM member portal. Please note that participants will be required to create an account. So I just finished sharing that with you all, and that's what this is saying, that that is an expectation in order to be able to access this, is to complete the inventory form so that we can have more information. Educators are advised to use Google Classroom to maintain student work and ensure easy accessibility. However, educators should maintain assignments using whatever works best for their students. Okay, so in the United States, the educators who have participated in this curriculum have used Google Classroom in the past, but I'm not sure if in Ethiopia and other parts of the world you all are using Google Classroom or another platform. So my advice is to just use whatever platform works for you, but keep in mind that it's designed, and you'll see Google Classroom being referenced throughout this curriculum. All right, so before we begin, I want to share a vision of you. I want you all to imagine your students in the place of the students that you see in this video. These are students who participated in the Community Advocacy Project last school year here in the United States. But I want you to imagine your students in place of these wonderful children. These children are amazing, just like yours. But this is going to give you an overview of what you will engage in with young people during this school year. The Community Advocacy Project is a project where students identify an issue that negatively impacts one of their communities. And I like to say one of their communities because oftentimes we think about community as just a neighborhood, but it can be the school community, it can be one of their clubs. Of course, it can be the neighborhood or New York City at large, but it can also be the global community. And we do have, our students are absolutely globally minded more than any other generation before. So they identify an issue. They have to then research the issue. So they collect primary data by creating their own surveys, interviews, and disseminating those to people relevant for. And they also then have to collect secondary data, so online research about their issue. They then take that knowledge and they formulate a plan of action. So for me, this is the real magic. It's because students are taking action in their community around this change. And so what that could look like is providing knowledge to the community about the issue. So if they find that one of the major barriers or root causes is a lack of knowledge, there are students who are creating PSAs about the issue. And letting people know like what the issue is, but also how you can take action to move towards change. And so some students are directly engaging with organizations that are already focused on the issue. So like tobacco is their challenge, the issue that they're focused on. They may be joining organizations that focus on helping to reduce tobacco use. And so there's a wide variety. It is student-centered decision of what issue they want to focus on. They get to choose, they get to decide what action they want to take. I provide the parameters of the project itself, but then it's really up to them. That's the part that I also love because there's not enough opportunities to do this for something that matters to them. And then once they take their action, their culminating task is that they'll present their action-based research at the Community Advocacy Project Expo in May. And at that expo, they'll also have a call to action for the community to join them in furthering their cause. And so I'm excited that this is something that is taking place in the classroom. I ask students, how do you feel about doing something like this? They're like, a lot of students like, I think this is great. I've never had an opportunity to talk about mental health, and it's something that matters to me. I've, lost a friend on suicide or whatever the particular issue may be, but it's an opportunity for them to dive into it more and also to help provide knowledge to others. Okay. So this is the vision. This is the ultimate goal. It's about supporting young people with using their academic skills, their 21st century skills, and their third millennium skills to learn about and, more importantly, to improve their communities through advocacy. So, we're going to just move straight on into getting into the lessons. All right. This is a 10 lesson curriculum is designed to be very manageable for educators to implement into their curriculum. This can be implemented into an English class or language class. It can be implemented into a social studies class, a math class, a science class. And so, as you can see, this curriculum is designed to be able to be implemented really into any class. It can also be implemented into after school programs, extracurricular activities as well. And regardless of where it's implemented, it will always develop students' academic skills. It will develop their 21st century skills. It will develop their third millennium skills, and it will also develop their communities. So it's a win-win all the way around. And it's designed to be for the community, with the community, by the community. All right. And so it's a traditional model, but it just has a new school twist because a lot of times in our global education systems, the focus is more focused on the curriculum or the content, but there aren't any real outcomes and it's not connected to the community. So the goal of this is to connect the community to the classroom. All right. So lesson one is about exploring our communities. And you'll see, and I just want to give a quick overview of just this format for the curriculum for the educators. When you access this licensed curriculum, you will see the 10 lessons. All right. So you'll see all 10 steps here. You can you can decide if you want to do two lessons in one day, if you want to take 2 days to do one lesson. It's really up to you. It has that flexibility built in. um the times when I have implemented it, I've it's been done in a few different ways. But you can do most of the lessons within 1 hour. So if you have like an hour for a class period and you want to just do one lesson per day, it really is kind of designed in that way. And we'll talk about the part where there are community activities, meaning things that students need to do outside of the classroom. And this is the community element of it. And so we'll talk about that. So you'll see all 10 lessons, but you'll also see some ideas for getting the community engaged, and you'll also have a set of resources to for students to be able to see examples of youth advocacy, but also for them to be able to access resources for youth advocacy through this curriculum. And again, um, you have in order to get access to the project resources, you have to first assign the license agreement, but then you also still have to create an account on the CBE movement website. So we will begin. Some of the things that you'll also notice is that all of the lessons have a starter. So a starter, just like a warm up activity, it should take maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Then you have the main activity, and so this is the part where they're doing something that's a next step in the project, one of the steps in the project. But you'll also see with some of the lessons that there are resources. This one in particular has a lot of resources. This is one of the more critical elements of the project where advocacy takes place. So this has a lot of resources. And then every lesson wraps up with a reflection. And reflection is just an opportunity for students to really take a moment to think about what they've just engaged in and just share their thoughts. And we'll talk more about each of those elements as we get to each lesson. Okay. So, for lesson one, the starter is that educators will ask students to share their thoughts about what makes a community, both in general and within their own experiences. And then they'll engage in a discussion. Some educators, you definitely have the option if you want students to write first, and you want them to maybe have a discussion with an elbow partner, we say in New York City, or someone who's sitting nearby, you can do it that way, or you can have a conversation with the whole class and just let a few students share. You all are the experts. You know how to engage with young people, so you do it in the way that makes sense for you. All right. So then next is the introduction. So because this is lesson one, you want to introduce the project to the students. And so the way that this correct curriculum recommends to do so is by showing the video that I just shared, a year in review of the CBE movement during the 2023-2024 school year, where students engaged in a community advocacy project as well as an expo. Another video that is very powerful that is suggested to show students is the stories of young change makers. And so this shows young people, primarily teenagers, are like from age 12 to 18 or 19, engaged in change making, which is another way of saying community advocacy. And so they're taking action to make the world a better place, just like your students will do. And you'll also want to inform the students that by the end of the project, they will be change makers by advocating to change an issue that negatively affects one of their communities. And so we'll talk about the one of their communities a little bit more in a second. But then you'll also provide an overview of the community advocacy project unit. So the entire unit, just giving them, letting them know that it's a 10 lesson activity that they'll be engaged in, that by the end, they will have poster boards that will be made that will showcase their research, that they'll be engaging in research, that they will not only learn about issues, but they will take action to move the needle towards changing an issue. And then they will encapsulate their research on a poster board and then share their research with the community, and also ask the community to join them in helping to create change. So just a simple sentence like that is a great way to provide an overview to the students. All right, so in the first activity, you'll introduce the idea of different types of communities by asking students to identify the various communities they belong to. So a lot of times when we hear the term community, at least in New York, we think about like the neighborhood community. But the community can be your family community, your school community, of course, the neighborhood, sports teams, and all the way out to the global community. We are all a part of the same community, which is the global community. And ultimately, my goal is global harmony. And my way of moving towards that goal is through the development of third millennium skills. And my way of developing third millennium skills is through community-based education. And so it's all about the community, and ultimately it's about the global community. But students are part of the point is students are a part of various communities. And so this first activity will take them through that exploration. Students may optionally create a visual representation or diagram or drawing of their communities, but they will have this document. And that's one thing I meant to say. Anywhere on this in this curriculum on this page, you'll where you see it that it's underlined, this is a hyperlink to a document. And so you'll notice this statement in a lot of lessons, and this will let you know when it's an assignment that needs to be, that should be a document that should be used as an assignment. And so you'll see, like it says here, create a Google Classroom assignment for this task for future reference. And in parentheses, it says, have students submit their list of communities or community mapping visuals. And so this lets you know the assignment. And I have it italicized so it stands out just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, just so you know that this is always where the assignment lies. And the document for the assignment is usually hyperlinked right before this sentence. And so this is the document. I have it underlined as communities, but when you click on it, you'll see that it's a community, like our community's activity where students get to list. It's just having a conversation about what are the different communities that we belong to. Okay. And so after that activity, and if you're using Google Classroom, You would set up Google Classroom ahead of time, with this activity available and accessible to your class, your students. But if you're doing paper, then you would have it printed out ahead of time so that students can write on it during the class time. If you're having them keep the documents themselves, then you want to share the document with them and just make sure that they know that they need to keep all of the assignments for each lesson in one place, because every week they build on each other. So they're starting with lesson one, but next week with lesson two, they're looking back at their lesson one assignment. So you want to make sure that they have access to all of their work as they're moving through this entire project. All right. So last thing for lesson one is the reflection. So after they have discussed all of the communities that they belong to, they'll discuss with the class how their personal communities contribute to their identity and well-being. Ask students to share thoughts about a community they strongly connect to and why. And so you're just kind of wrapping up, but you're reflecting on what you've done and always bringing it back to them, putting it in the context of them so that it's connected to their real lives, to them. They see that there's a meaning to this and it's not just work that, needs to be done, but there's actually something more powerful or more, meaningful. All right. So now let's move on to lesson two, which is focused on identifying community needs and issues. All right. So the starter is to ask students to share their thoughts about what it means for a community to have needs and or issues. And again, I recommend engaging in a discussion. For the activity, you'll have students explore community needs by having them reference their list of communities from lesson one to record their likes and dislikes within the various communities. So you see that likes and dislikes is underlined. This is a document that they can use to just record their thoughts about what are the things that we like about our community, what are the things that we dislike. So it's an opportunity. They're building on. Remember, last week they identified their various communities, or last lesson, we'll say. And again, this can happen in the same day. This can happen back to back. So I don't want you to think that a certain amount of time has to lapse in order for you to go on to the next lesson. If you have the time to do both lessons in one day, these can definitely be accomplished back to back. Okay. So they will look at their list of communities. So they may have my family, my church, my team, whatever, the global community, my city, my nation. They'll write list a few things that they like and dislike about each of those communities. All right. And once they do that, you want make sure that you emphasize that issues are problems or things that they dislike about their community, things that they would like to see change. And then ask students to identify three dislikes that they would like to see change in their communities. So remember, they're first starting out with just things that I like, things that I dislike, but then you're taking them to, all right, what are three of those things? Look at all those dislikes. What are three things that you would like to see change in one of your communities? And then with a peer, students will discuss why they would like to see these issues change. Ultimately, students will select one community issue to focus on for the community advocacy project. And then if there are students who are unsure, these students can use a list of community issues. So you see that this is hyperlinked. Once you click on this, you will get a list of issues that students can explore, that students can do their community advocacy project around. A lot of these issues students have engaged in the United States, and there are other issues as well that haven't been explored yet that I hope students will explore. But this just gives, sometimes students, because this is a new concept for a lot of young people, they may not be prepared or used to be asked, well, what do you think? What would you like to do? That's not typical of our education system, or at least I'll say here in America. And so a lot of students are not used to being able to be so empowered. And so it is important to be able to provide some guidance when needed. All right. We definitely want this to be a student centered project, especially at the high school level, and there are high school educators on today. At the middle school level, you can definitely, if you want to do like focus on have students in groups and let each group decide on a topic. You can do it that way at the middle school level. And at the elementary school level, you can do groups as well, but even at the lower grades, it can be beneficial to focus on one topic for the whole class and maybe let different groups focus on subtopics within that class. So that's just another tip for the different grade levels. All right. So unsure students, as I said, can use the community issues list for ideas. Now, this is the assignment part. Ask students to write a summary of their issue, the impacted community, how it impacts them, and why they want to see it change. So those things will be on this document. You see, right is hyperlinked. So this is the document. This is the assignment document. And once they complete, you want to make sure that wherever you put it, okay. But again, for this, the recommendation is create a Google Classroom assignment for this task for future reference. Have students submit their community issue. So again, this is always the signifier that this right here, this last thing is the assignment that you want students to turn in. So you want to collect it, you want to look at it, whether you grade it, or, it's not really a right or wrong in this instance. It's just complete or incomplete. So as long as students are answering the questions, they are correct. If you see that they're misunderstanding the questions, please, make sure that you guide them as an educator. If you're a community partner that's already in the classroom with the students for this project, which I hope some of you community partners are going to be there from the beginning in these early stages, you'll be a thought partner for the students, and just kind of helping, allowing them to bounce ideas off of you, sharing ideas, sharing your thoughts. Okay. So next, you end with a reflection for lesson 2. And for this reflection, ask students to discuss why they focused on the selected issue with a peer, or you can have students also just share with the entire classroom. So it's up to you on whether you want it to be just a small conversation or if you want them to share their ideas large. A lot of that will also depend on the amount of time that it takes for them to complete the assignment and how much time you have left during the class period. All right. So that is lesson 2. Lesson 3 focuses on researching the issue and doing this by collecting secondary data. And this secondary data is both from quantitative and qualitative sources of information. All right. So the starter is to ask students to share their thoughts about the importance of secondary data collection when advocating to change a community issue. And you should then engage in a discussion, as always, with the starters. So just a way to get everybody, on the same page and thinking about what is to come during the next lesson. All right. So for the activity, you will define quantitative data as numerical information used for statistical analysis. And you may have to break that down more. You'll know your students and you'll know whether or not you need to elaborate more or if this is enough. And you want to also define qualitative data as descriptive information used for understanding. So these are very simple definitions, but you can definitely, use more information. There's a wealth of information, videos and things like that can help to break that information down. All right. Next, you'll discuss the importance of credible sources and ethical considerations in online research. So it's important to make sure that you take time to help students and emphasize the importance of using credible sources, reliable sources of information. Help them to know that they can't just take anything. Like there's a ton of information on the internet and not all of the information is accurate. And so they want to get information from accurate sources so that they can have true information and be able to make a truly informed decision when they do decide how they want to take action. When they're investigators, or these students are researchers when they're engaging in this process. And so we want to make sure that we are setting them up for success and helping them to understand what appropriate research looks like, and how to document that research. And so that's what this is. You see, it's a hyperlink here. So there are some videos and sources of some resources, as well as some questions that students can ask themselves to ensure that they're using credible sources of information. All right. So then next, you want to introduce online platforms, databases, and resources for data collection. Then ask students to answer questions about their issues by using online and other secondary sources, such as newspapers, reference books, etc. So they can use thesauruses, encyclopedias. Those are some old-fashioned things, but all of those things are also online, but they can, if they prefer to use hard copies, or if that's the access that they have is hard copies, then that's perfectly fine. The goal is to gather information from secondary sources, so that means that they're not asking people about their experiences yet. um Students may create additional questions to research. So there are things there. So these questions right here it's a list of, this is a hyperlink and this is the assignment. So on this assignment, there are a list of questions to help guide students through the secondary research process. But if they have their own questions also that they would like to complete, they definitely should investigate those things as well. If there are things that they know they want to know more about and is not listed with this set of questions, it's absolutely fine, and it should be encouraged for them to dive into those wonderings as well. And so as always, this, because that the questions, this is the assignment. There's the directions to create a Google Classroom assignment for this task for future reference, and to have students submit their answers to the secondary data questions. So however you want to collect that assignment, that's up to you as the educator. And again, this is when community partners can support students if they're in the classroom during this lesson. You can support students by having conversations with them, asking them about what their interest around this topic and what are the things they want to know more about, helping them to look up some of the information, providing sources of information for them as well. All right. And then this is where we start to get our first set of resources. And you'll see a model example, and you'll see this model. It's a model that I created around police brutality, and it's something that is very, it's a global problem, and so I wanted to pick something that's a global problem. It's obvious that it's a problem here in America. It became very prevalent prevalently on people's radars around the time of the pandemic. But it's something that's been going on longer than that, and unfortunately still continues to this day in America and around the world. And so it's an issue that I felt that students could connect to. And of course, it's always important as an educator to model what you want students to do. And so I knew that it would be of great value for students to have a model. And so you'll see that you'll see moving forward that this model being used for students. So you can always select this document and show students what it would look like once they answer the questions, for these research questions around secondary data, and also making sure that they cite their sources. When you're using secondary data, it's important, for us to cite where we got the information from, even with primary data. But secondary data is like it's someone else's information, someone else's research. And so you want to make sure that you give credit to that researcher for providing that information. And then this is a link with This link gives you information about various community resources, community issue resources, and that can be found on the Community Based Education Movement's nonprofit page, which is the Global Academy for Community Based Education. And so on the nonprofit page, there are a wealth of resources, and you can create an account on that page as well and get access to a lot of information that is free to the world, all right, as a gift from our nonprofit. And then students, once they have completed this activity, you want to have them reflect. And this is one of the activities that may take more than just one class period. There are quite a few questions on there. And so this is something that you may want to have them complete for homework and have ready by the time they come back for lesson 4. But so for the reflection, you want to ask students to share challenges and or solutions encountered during their secondary research. And so this is an important reflection because it helps to build some um, encouragement for resilience. This can be sometimes daunting for some students, especially if they haven't engaged in deep research. And so some of them may feel overwhelmed. Some of them may feel like, why am I doing this? So you want to help to keep them grounded in that this is the work of a researcher, an action-based researcher, even more specifically, in that, when you're a community advocate, you have to understand the problem first before you can move towards a solution. And so this is part of that process. So you want to just keep them encouraged. All right. So now we're on to lesson 4, which is researching the issue by collecting primary survey data. And so now we're on to the primary data. So that means students are going directly to the sources of information themselves. They are the researcher of primary information. And so with the survey data, that's quantitative data. Remember, we said that's data that's used for statistical analysis. And so now they're going to start collecting data that can then be turned into statistics. And so remember at the beginning of this session, I said that this curriculum can live in a math class, and now you can start to see, this fits perfectly into a statistics unit. Um, so we'll start off with the starter where you ask students to share their thoughts about the importance of survey data collection when advocating for a community issue and engage in a discussion as always. And so you want to they may not have answers yet of why you need survey data, but you'll be the expert as the educator or as the community partner who's engaging with the students, so you can help to share some thoughts and ideas if there's a complete, if no one has any ideas. All right. So with the activity, you will discuss the importance of collecting primary data when advocating for change. You'll then emphasize that surveys collect primary quantitative data. Discuss considerations for selecting appropriate survey questions. All right. So students are going to design their own surveys. And this is the part that gets me really excited because and I know we have some college professors in the session today, and just as myself, I could say like this is the work that we do as to become a doctor. This kind of research that I had to do, and so it excites me to know that students are engaged in this sort of research at the K to 12 level because it really evokes the deep critical thinking. It evokes the problem solving and the creativity, those 21st century skills that students need for not just college, but for careers in an ever evolving 21st century. And so this particular lesson is like one of my favorites for sure. So for the survey design, you'll ask students to design a survey related to their community issue. I do have provide survey questions that they can use for ideas, but if they have their own questions that they want to use, you can definitely allow them to do it in a way that they feel is most meaningful. Create surveys using Google Forms. And so I'm a big Google user of the, it's very easy and accessible to have everything in one place. And so Google Forms is an app that allows you to create surveys, or, you can even I've used it for tests and things like that as well, questionnaires, all kinds of things. And so this link right here is just to the Google Forms website, and it's for you as the educator, but also for students to be able to go to the website. And then this is a video around how to create a survey in Google Forms, and this also is a video on how to share a link to the survey, to the Google Form survey, so the students, they will, if if online accessibility is something that is realistic for your students and for the community, they can give the link and just have people complete the survey online. However, if online access is a limitation, then those students, the teachers can print the survey for the students to be able to give to people in their community, or the students can ask questions and check off for the community members, so that you can be creative in the ways in which you collect the survey data. But if you do have the online access, and if you do use Google, you can definitely use Google Forms, and that's what the students in America used when they completed the project. The students that you saw in the video.
Students that you saw in the video. And students that you saw in the video. And students that you
Yeah.
saw in the video. And students that you saw in the video.
Okay. So let me see, where am I? Okay, so then you will, after the students learn how to create surveys and disseminate the surveys, you'll ask, and once they have created the surveys, you'll ask them to share the link to their surveys. So this is the assignment, okay? The actual link to their surveys, if they're going to use online sources. If they're writing them by hand, then they'll turn that in, but you want to make sure that you're able to see every student's set of survey questions. In the directions, it says like 5 to 10 questions. You don't want to have too many questions for a survey. And you want them to ask at least five to, and I'll get down to that, but at least five people. And you can create, so this document right here, it asks about their issue, the impacted community, and some other questions, but it also leaves space for them to put the link to their questions. But of course, as I just stated, you can also have them just write their questions if they're not doing an online survey. And because this is an assignment, it's recommended again to create a Google Classroom assignment for this task for future reference, and have students share the link to their surveys as the assignment. All right. Now, this is a model that they can use as a guide to help them through the process. And you want to initially ask them to identify at least 7 people who they can survey, just so they can have more than 5 people in mind, just in case someone is not able to, that they've identified. For the resources, you'll see my survey results model on police brutality again, but also you'll get you have access to a video on designing a survey. So they definitely show these videos to the students. You know your students best though. So if you feel like if these are things that they've done before and they're already experts in this, you use your own discretion to decide what resources you want to use that I'm providing, what additional resources you may want to bring in. So know that you don't only have to use these resources that I share. If there are other things that your students would benefit from, please include those as well. All right. So then for the reflection, you want to ask students to share their survey questions. Ask students to share how their survey questions will help them understand the impact of the issue on the community, its root causes, and or potential solutions. So this is important. You want to make sure that they understand that this survey has a goal. It's not just to ask questions, but it's to be a researcher so that they can have a better understanding of the issue, a better understanding of the root causes, as well as a better understanding of potential solutions. Right from the beginning, they want to research not only what are the problems, why are these things happening, but they also want to research what are other people doing about it. What actions are other people currently taking? But then they also want to think about, well, what's the gap? Why are things still happening if there are actions being taken? So there are a lot of things that they need to consider as they're engaged in this research project. All right, so now this is the first community activity students will engage in. And as I shared earlier, the community activity is where students will do things outside of the classroom. They'll do things in the community. And so you'll ask students to administer the survey to at least 5 people and interpret the data as shown in the survey results model. And so again, this is another piece of that whole police brutality community advocacy project where they'll be able to analyze the survey results. And you'll see it in a statistical data way, but you'll also see sentences that will summarize each piece of statistical data. So you'll see some bar graphs in there. You'll see some pie charts in there. This is, again, the statistical section of this project. All right. So the community activity, I just want to say that they can interview their family members. It depends on what the issue is. They can interview classmates. They can interview teachers. This is, as a community partner, if you're here when they're engaging in this lesson, you can help them to create their survey questions, give them questions to consider, but also you can be someone who takes the survey. And I really hope that that happens. You know, that's an important piece. And you can also be someone who shares their survey with other members in the community, other civil society organizations, other government people who work for government or corporations. So the community, okay, that's why it's a community activity. So anyone that you can think of that's a part of the community who has some sort of connection to this issue, or even if they don't, because sometimes what students may find out is that people don't even know that their issue is a problem. And so they find out that a root cause is a lack of knowledge. And so, you want to talk about who are the ideal people to interview. At least 5, but I know some students in the video that you saw, some students interviewed 50, not interviewed, surveyed 50 people. They got 50 people to take their survey, but then remember they were doing it online. So all they had to do was share a link. Some people put the link on their social media and allow people, or they created a QR code and put it on their social media and allowed people to be able to access their survey from there. So students are very creative. This is why we need them in the community to help us address these issues, because they have ideas that sometimes we don't even think about, that are just sometimes in our blind spot. They have solutions that are needed. We need them. We need their voice. And so please allow them to use their creativity, encourage them to think outside of the traditional box and do things that are more effective for the 21st century and the third millennium. All right. So lesson 5 is around researching the issue, collecting primary qualitative data through interviews. All right. So qualitative is about understanding something on a deeper level through conversation, through the lived experiences of those who are impacted by whatever the issue is that a researcher is looking into. So we'll start off by asking students to share their thoughts about the importance of interview data collection when advocating for a community issue, and then you'll have them engage in a discussion. All right. So it's very similar to the survey question, but now it's about the interview, and have a conversation around what makes surveys different from interviews. How is that information different? And it's really different because in an interview, you can really, you can ask follow-up questions. And a survey, you're giving it to them like you're not engaging in conversation with them. You're just asking them, to select certain answers, and then you're putting that information into graphs. So a survey is an interview is not necessarily going to be graphed unless yeah, it's typically not going to be graphed. It's going to be, quotes and things like that. So the activity is for students to discuss the importance of collecting primary data when advocating for change, and emphasize that interviews collect primary qualitative data. Okay, so this is quality information. Discuss considerations for selecting appropriate interview questions. All right, so this is the interview design section. And so you'll first ask students to design interview questions, at least 5, okay, related to the community issue. No more than 10, though. You don't want to have too many interview questions either. They're researchers, but they're not doctoral level students, so they don't have to have a lot of questions. You want to keep it simple so that it's manageable for them as well as for yourselves. All right, so you ask students to design the questions, at least 5 questions, and you can, again, they have sample interview questions that they can use for ideas, so they can take their 5 questions directly from this document right here. And by the way, you see there's another hyperlink for the assignment. And then they have these sample interview questions for ideas, but then they'll create interview questions in Google Docs. And of course, it's recommended that you create a Google Classroom assignment for this task for future reference and have them submit their interview questions. All right. So you want to make sure that you get your eyes on those questions. As an educator, you want to make sure that these are questions that make sense, questions that will help them to get the information they want. Same thing for community partners. If you're working with students during this lesson, you want to make sure that they are formulating their questions in a way that are going to be able to get them the answers that they're looking for. They should be looking for information to understand why this issue is happening. What are the root causes? What are things that people are doing to take action to move the needle towards change? What are the gaps? What are the things that are missing? These are the types of things that they should be investigating. And when it comes to the interviewing people, they should be interviewing people who are either negatively impacted by the issue, or people who are taking action to move the needle towards change around this specific issue. And so as a community partner, if this is your area of expertise, whatever their issue is, you can be the person they interview, to be able to talk about some solutions, or to talk about the problem itself. And so you can keep that in mind as a community partner. All right. Um, there is a model, of course, that students can use, and the teacher should show the students at least as class-wide, but you can also make it available to them to access in Google Classroom, but it's not an assignment, it's just a model for them to see what it looks like to have a interview complete. All right. And then determine how the data will be recorded. So with an interview, you do not want them to try and just go off of memory and ask questions and just try to remember. You want them to either record it. So if the student has a phone, they can use their audio recording. They can do a video recording. If necessary, if they don't have the recording option, they can take notes as they're interviewing, but they definitely want to make sure that they have the information and don't try and just go off of memory and memorize it, because then it can be incorrect. All right. So the best is definitely to audio record or video record, because even when they're paraphrasing notes, they can paraphrase incorrectly, but that is a form of interviewing. That's what a lot of interviewers, news reporters, and things, they take notes. So, it's definitely a form that can be used. But if they have the option of all three, definitely audio or video. Video is even better because they can use the video during the expo, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But that video can make a comeback. They can use that video during their PSA or segments of the video, so it can be very powerful to use the video, but also the audio. But again, if those aren't an option, then it's definitely fine for them to just take notes as they're interviewing the person. So then you want to ask students to identify at least 3 people to interview at this point. Just identify, just have a list of who are some great people that I can interview around this issue, around this topic. Um, you have resources, which are the model. This is the interview responses from the person I interviewed for police brutality. But then there's also a video that you can show to students, and you can show these videos as a whole class, or if you feel like there are individual students who may need these videos, then you can just show it to them. And these, most of these videos are on YouTube. All right. So it's globally accessible. Then once at the end of class, you want to wrap up with a reflection, asking students to share how the interview questions will help them understand the impact of the issue on the community, its root causes and or potential solutions for addressing the issue. So again, I already stated this. Make sure that these questions, and that's why this reflection is important, because they want to make sure that their interview questions are helping them to get answers around this issue, the root causes, as well as potential solutions, as well as what are those gaps. All right. And then this is another one that has a community activity connected to it, where you should ask students to administer the interview to at least one person. So for the interview, at least one person, but you can definitely do 2 or more, but at minimum 1, because the interview is going to take time. Survey at least 5 people, interview at least 1 person who is impacted by the issue or taking action to change the issue, and interpret the data as shown in the interview responses model. So again, another model using the police brutality project to show how the interview responses can be encapsulated and put together for further analysis. All right. So now, lesson 6, we move on to, this is the first form of taking action by creating a public service announcement, also known as a PSA, and you'll see it listed as a PSA throughout the rest of this lesson, with a call to action. All right. So you'll start by asking students to share their thoughts about creating PSAs with calls to action for the community to support impacting their issues and engage in a discussion. So you just want to say, like, why would a public service announcement be valuable when wanting to address an issue? Just conversation like that, just to get them started. Then for the activity, you'll discuss the importance of using public service announcements to inspire others to take action for a good cause. All right. Inform students that they will make a call to action for community members at this is the nonprofit community advocacy project expo, which I do plan to have in Ethiopia. But also you at each school can have their own expo as well. And so show examples of effective public service announcements, discussing key elements such as clarity, appeal, and a call to action. So this section is around, it's very much connected to like persuasive writing, persuasive essays, persuasive speeches, rhetorical speeches. So this is something that's very much connected to like the English language, arts classes, or any other specific language arts classes. So this is around the speaking, listening, reading, and writing elements of academic standards. So you want to show examples of effective PSAs. And so you'll see this link right here, and this gives you videos with various public service announcements. And you'll be able to discuss those elements, like I said, clarity, appeal, and a call to action. Ask students to use the systems thinking iceberg template to explore systems thinking mental models to focus on sustainable change. So I just want to take a moment to talk about that. If we had time, I would show like some videos. So systems thinking is a model where it explores just the systems that are involved in thinking. And then there's an iceberg model, which has various levels. And I'm not going to talk about it as much as I want to right now, like all of the levels, but you'll see that this link will bring you to a document that will allow students to dive deeper into this concept of systems thinking and the iceberg model, ultimately focused on the mental model. So mental models are the thinking that people have that causes an issue to be sustainable. Basically, we don't want issues to be sustainable, but we have to understand what's taking place that's allowing them to be, what's the thinking that's taking place that allows that to happen, and then what do we as advocates, as change makers, what do we do to get people to change their mind, and who are the people we should target? Because honestly, a lot of times the best audience to target to make sustainable change is the young people. Hence what I'm doing. This is my ultimate community advocacy project, is the community-based education, because I know that we need young people in order to really begin to create sustainable change around issues that impact the globe, as well as local communities. So students can use a graphic organizer to plan their public service announcement using a soapstone method and the rhetorical devices, ethos, pathos, and logos. So I in America, for sure, these are methods that are used for persuasive essay writing. And so I wanted to make sure that students have an opportunity to develop their skills in this area, because it not only serves them as students, but it serves them for life, whether they're going to be advocates as a profession, or just even just in whatever way that they need to advocate for things. We always need to persuade someone to take action in some way, even if it's my children wanted to persuade me to cook a certain meal for the night, and so these are these are skills that everyone can use. But the soapstone method is a particular it's an acronym for a particular set of approaches that an author should consider when they are trying to convince someone to take action. And then the rhetorical devices, ethos, pathos, and logos are also they've been around for centuries as an idea of the ways to address people, and convince people through either being an expert, through appealing to their emotions, or through logical data and evidence. So this graphic organizer will help students to go through that process. And the iceberg template will help them to think about the thinking that has caused the problem and what solutions can potentially help to reverse that thinking. All right. Then students will create a PSA, and they can do this through a video. They can make a poster, a PowerPoint. They can do a 2 to 3 minute speech. And there's specifically something called a soapbox speech. And this is a link to that website where you can get the information for that particular format. They can also create an elevator pitch. They can do a TikTok, an Instagram video, YouTube video, an essay, etc. So you see, there are a lot of choices just right here, but these aren't the only choices. If students have a different way that they want to deliver their PSA, please allow them to do whatever way that they would like. And I'm definitely advocating for videos as much as possible. And the students who engaged in the project last school year, a lot of them put their PSAs on their own social media, which was one of the most exciting things for me, because it's like, when do students take their schoolwork and share it on their social media, share it in their personal lives? And so that says a lot about this project. It says a lot about students being engaged in something that matters to them. And when school engages in their real lives, they're willing to allow their real lives to engage in school. So think about the ways in which students, or have conversations with students about the ways in which they can create their PSA, and what they do with the PSA. All right. So as always, though, unsure students can use the list of calls to action. So you'll see this document right here. It's a list of I don't know, I even know how many, probably at least, 30 different ideas of how they can create a call to action. Because remember, the point of a PSA is to inform, but it's also to let people know that they can do something about it and let them know what that something is that they can do. And so we call that a call to action. What are you asking people to do? So for some people, it may be join a website. For some people, it may be create sign this petition. For some people, it may be meet us here. We're going to march. Whatever that call to action is. So this list, this has a list of call to action ideas for students. All right, and so you will create a Google Classroom assignment for the students for future reference and have the students submit their. So for this one, you'll have them submit their systems thinking iceberg template, the graphic organizer, and the PSA. That's, you can do all three. I recommend all three because this is the real, to me, this is the most powerful piece of like the planning and thinking and executing of the community advocacy project. And I think all of them are so valuable. That systems thinking iceberg model is life changing. If people can understand that the reason why we have so many problems because of mental models, and they can go through life understanding that mental models need to be addressed, if our youth can, take that into their lives, that's going to change the game of life. That's, that'll bring us closer to my ultimate vision of global harmony, because we'll be getting into the minds of people, understanding the minds. That's where everything begins. And so that's where we really need to, do our exploration and work to create changes in the minds. But also the graphic organizer is very useful for even for SAT exams and things like that that students need to take. It can help them in that way as well. And so but definitely, if you're only going to do one, the PSA is the one thing that they definitely need to submit. Okay. And they can submit that in Google Classroom, but of course, whatever way you want to have them submit that assignment is fine as well. Okay. So these are just some questions to consider. The students don't have to answer these questions and turn them in, but these can be discussion questions, or you can just have it like on a board. And these are things that they should be asking themselves. What is my specific ask? Again, what is the call to action for my PSA? What root causes do I want to change? And what mental models contribute to the problem? Who can help make the change I'm seeking? So again, you want to think about who's your audience, who are you wanting to persuade, or who are students wanting to persuade, and then who can no, what is the best way to persuade others to help my cause? Okay, how can I incorporate soapstone ethos, pathos, and logos to persuade others? So again, these questions are just another way of addressing the things that are above. Okay. And then this is the one I referenced earlier with a lot of resources. So you have videos for the systems thinking iceberg models. You have some videos on ethos, pathos, logos, as well as the rhetorical triangle around ethos, pathos, logos, and how to use the soapstone strategy. You have some videos on that. So you have support, even as an educator. If this is a new concept for you, the resources are here for you to, and I definitely recommend that educators dive into these resources before you do the project. For any student ambassadors that you have, look through these resources with them, ask them what are some of the best ways that you can introduce this to students. What are some things that, may be more helpful to help students to be able to take ownership of these ideas. All right. And then the reflection is to ask students to reflect on why they believe their PSA will inspire others to take action, and to reflect on the process of creating the PSA. All right. So just to really think of, you want to gauge whether are they invested in this? Do they believe in the effectiveness of their PSA? Because we want them to. If they don't, then how will others? So you want to be able to ask those questions. And this is another assignment that may take more than just the class period. And so they may have to complete this on their own at home, or if you want this to be an assignment that's broken up into 2 sessions, you can decide what works best for you and your students. All right. So this is another piece that is exciting to me, and this is creating a community advocacy action plan. All right. So ask students to share their thoughts about taking action to change issues that negatively impact their communities and to describe what the communities will look like when the issues no longer exist. Engage in the discussion as always. All right. And so this is about the visionary piece, okay? And this is what I think about. This is why I focus on global harmony. This means that the issues that we're looking at now no longer exist. We are harmonious and we work together to address. We may have issues, we may have challenges, but it won't be these isms, racism, classism, genderism, all of these other things. We will be able to understand that everyone is perfect for their purpose. And so this is beginning to introduce those those ideas around the third millennium thinking, the third millennium skills, and developing those skills. So you want students to daydream. You want them to think about, what does the world look like? What does the community look like when police brutality no longer exists, or when pollution no longer exists, or any whatever the issue is, that they mental health is addressed and it is no longer something that is ignored. What does the community look like then? All right, so this is the visionary piece. So with the activity, you want to, as the educator, discuss the importance of being aware of an issue and the need for action to change an issue. Ask students to consider how people, power, and resources can be used to create change. Explore the idea of creating a community advocacy action plan by discussing the 3 ways people can advocate for change. Ask students to identify 3 possible actions. Unsure students can use the community advocacy project list of options for advocacy ideas. So again, this can be a new concept for students, and so they may um, not be able to think about what they want to do. But once they see this list, a lot of those who don't have ideas will definitely get ideas. There are a lot of ideas on this list for students. So then you want to emphasize that advocacy plans should be SMART. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And you can always, it's called SMART goals. And so if you want to dive into that a little deeper, you can find plenty of videos on YouTube around developing SMART goals. Okay. And then with a peer, you want to ask students to discuss how their action plans will impact their issues. All right. So that's the key. How does this connect to the issue? Always keeping it connected back to the issue. This is where teachers, your guidance is necessary. This is where community partners, your guidance is necessary, making sure that whatever they're thinking about all leads back to that same very first thing of your identifying your issue, thinking about your community and things that you dislike. How does all of this address and connect back to that? All right. So then you want to ask students to select one action to implement for their projects and create a Google Classroom assignment for this task. So again, the action, this document right here is the document that they will turn in. Okay. So the resources you have, this is an excellent video around understanding advocacy and action, just to kind of get their juices flowing around advocacy and the importance of taking action to move the needle towards change. And for the reflection, ask students to share how their advocacy plans will help them impact their issue. You want them to always be able to communicate this. You want them to be able to visualize and understand, again, how this connects back to the issue. Reflect on the process of developing an action plan. So let them think about that. You want them to go through this project, but you want them to also think about the process of going through this project, so that they embody it deeper, they take ownership of it deeper. And it's important for them to be able to reflect on the process and discuss that with the whole, so that they can understand if they have faced challenges, they may be able to see that other people are dealing with those same challenges and that some of the people overcame them and learn about those solutions that others have used to overcome those challenges. So then they will do the community activity. So again, this is something that will take place outside the class, and this is around implementing their action plan. So they're devising the plan during class, but then they're actually implementing it in the community. And let me just say, and also, you know, encourage them to take pictures when possible. But I also wanted to say that as an educator for me, and I'm a teacher, I've taught students who are, you know, have special needs, gen ed students, some students that are advanced. And so within a classroom, I understand that students work at different levels and different paces. And so you may have some students who their plan of action is their PSA. So I'm going back up. From some students, they may have already created their action plan, which is they've created their PSA and their plan of action is to share it with others. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that that is an excellent first step. That is an excellent way to be an advocate. And if that's what the student does, a round of applause to them because they have done something major. By, like I said, sharing it on their social media, if they have an opportunity to be able to share it, even if they create a video and they share it with family members, or if they are able to, let's say they're in high school and they're able to share with students, they're able to go to an elementary school and share their public service announcement. Like, these are powerful actions. And again, I just want to say, to me, it is very important that older students are educating younger students around the issues, because that's where you can affect the mental models. That's the easiest approach, is to persuade young people. So if it's around pollution, you want to get into the minds of young people around, we need to take care of our planet. It's easier to get them to build that habit than it is to get someone who's 75 years old, who's been throwing trash on the ground all their lives to develop that habit. So we want to always think about how are we influencing young people. But the mental models, we also, I'm not saying we give up on our adults. We still want to influence them. We don't want to give up hope. We want to help them to be better, you know, and to help us to make change, but just also encourage your students to think about how do they influence young people. All right. So when it comes to taking action, the action can absolutely be your PSA. And so the students, as young people, those student ambassadors who are listening in, you can use your PSA, or you can encourage your classmates who may be struggling to come up with, or may not have time to do an additional action. They can definitely use the PSA and share that with others as their action. However, you definitely can take other action as well. Your PSA can be one piece of something else that you do. And so again, there's a list of action ideas that students should definitely look at and try to do other things. Some of the things I just want to say, especially with the community partners on the call, that this is where, if you're like, say for example, we have community partners who are addressing the issue of young adults. Like we have Abigail on the phone, young adults who need job skills, that young adults are graduating from high school and they're not prepared for careers. And so with Abigail being, that's one of her areas of expertise, she can collaborate with young people who have that focus and help them to be able to do something extra. Maybe those students come and join her at her location and help young people to develop skills. Maybe they learn about it and they create a PSA on that. Maybe their PSA is showing video of young people getting these specific skills, developing these skills that will help them to be able to have sustainable careers in the future. That's one example. It could be around pollution. Maybe there's an organization that's focused on cleaning up communities and reducing pollution. And so if you're a community partner that does that, you can work with the students who are focused on that issue, and you can invite them to join you in a community cleanup or collaborate with the students, create a community cleanup where your organization invites people, students invite people, and everyone comes together to be able to create that change. All right. So the possibilities are truly endless, but this list can give you a lot of ideas to start with. All right. And so then lesson 8 is around continuing to take action. All right. So for the starter, you will ask students to share their thoughts. Let's mute that. You ask students to share their thoughts about taking action to address change now that they've created an advocacy action plan and engage in the discussion. So for some students, they will already have begun to take action. Some students maybe just have created their plan and they still need to take action. So during the activity, ask students to use class time to refine their action plans, implement their action plan, or reflect on the implementation of their action plan. So some students may have already done their complete action. Let's say they did a beach cleanup, then they've taken their action, or they've done they've attended a rally around whatever their issue may be, or they volunteered at a drug addiction clinic. So they may have already taken their action, and so now they can reflect on that. They can begin to reflect on the implementation of their action plan. So there are some additional resources around student advocacy. This is a video on YouTube, and this is another one around civic education, which is just another way of encouraging students to become civically engaged in their communities. So for the reflection, have students reflect on the process, their progress, and the next steps. How have they followed their original plan, and how have they pivoted it? So that's a part of the process. Is sometimes you plan for things to go one way, but you have to be flexible in the moment and know that those plans may change. And so some of your students may experience that during this process, and this is an opportunity for them to discuss that. For the community activity, you want to ask students to continue implementing their action plans in their impacted communities and ask students to continue implementing their action plans in their impacted communities, and of course, take pictures when possible. All right, because the pictures will be used when they start to create their posters for their to share their research. All right. So now we're on to lesson 9, reflection, evaluating the impact of the project. So now at this point, all of the students should have engaged in taking some sort of action, whether that's they're sharing their PSA on their social media, whether that's doing a community cleanup, whether that's volunteering, or whatever else they have come up with. At this point, when you get to this step, they should all be complete with that, and they'll be evaluating the process. So you'll start off by asking the students to share their thoughts about their community advocacy project experience and engage in a small discussion. Again, these starters should only be 5 to 10 minutes. This is not, you have to, as the educator or the community partner or the student ambassador, you want to make sure that you cut it off, and because the discussions are great. And this discussion can end up going for the entire period. So you have to set a timer to make sure that it's only 5 to 10 minutes, because it could end up taking the whole period, and then you won't have time to do the actual work that you're supposed to do. All right. So for the activity, review the process students have undertaken to become community advocates. At this point now, the students are officially community advocates. They have taken action to move the needle towards change and in an issue that negatively impacts their communities. So ask students to reflect on and evaluate the community advocacy actions and impact using the community advocacy project reflection. So this is another assignment document that they will complete, and you can create a Google Classroom assignment for both tasks for future reference, and have students submit their reflections. Okay, so the reflection, then their final reflection as a class conversation around this is to ask students to discuss their community advocacy project experiences with peers. So they can do it in a small group, they can do it in with a pair of two, or you can do it as a whole class if you want. Ask students to share their story, their why, their action plan, and their outcome. Now, my advice is to do it in sets of two so that everybody in the class can talk quickly. So you can say everyone has 2 minutes to talk about your why, your action plan, and your outcome, and then switch and let you listen and let your partner talk to you. And then maybe just a few people share out with the whole class. Okay. All right, everyone. We've made it to the final lesson, which is lesson 10, preparing the community advocacy project presentation. So now the students have completed the project. They've even reflected on it. They've looked at how has it impacted the community in whatever way, because it's not, and you want to emphasize to students, they are not going to change an issue in 10 lessons, like, for the whole world. So global warming will not be solved by the end of lesson 10, but they are addressing a root cause and they're moving the needle towards change, and hopefully creating sustainable change that will ultimately in time lead us to, having global warming figured out. All right, or whatever the issue may be. But you want them to be able to know that they're not going to, they're not eradicating something for the whole world, but they can make change. Because sometimes we look at the big picture, and if we can't change the big picture, we just give up and don't try at all. But we want them to be able to have that resilience and that persistence, to be able to say, I may not be able to change the whole big picture, but I can take a little piece out and make that big picture smaller. So that's the mindset we want our young people to have. Okay, you hear that, youth in the community-based education ambassadors? Okay, we want to just change the mindsets. All right, so now lesson 10, preparing the community advocacy project presentation. We want to start off by asking students to share their thoughts about presenting their projects at the Community Advocacy Project Expo. All right, and engaging in a conversation, because the truth is, some students will be public speakers, but a lot of students are, this may be the first time that they're speaking in such a public way. And so we want to make sure that we give them space to be able to express that, hey, I'm nervous. I don't want to do this. I'm scared. I've never done this before. And to let them know that that's to be expected. That's a normal feeling. Even me, I speak for a living and I still get nervous sometimes. And so it's important for students to understand that that's a part of the process. All right, so the activity for lesson 10 is, you'll start off by reminding students that they will showcase their action-based research and use their PSAs to make a call to action to community members at the school Community Advocacy Project Expo. So as I shared before, the goal is for students who engage in this project to participate in the expo at the school, but then also the Global Academy for Community-Based Education does have expos as well, where some students will be invited to participate in that, but every student should participate in at the school level expo. Ask students to create a community advocacy project poster using the following criteria. So their poster boards, as we saw in the video, we saw students at the expo at the end of the video, they had their poster boards, and those poster boards include their names, okay, for one. And by the way, students can work on this by them at the high school level. I talked about them working at it, working on the project individually, but they can also work on the project in groups as well at the high school level. So I just want to emphasize that, just in case people were thinking, high school students have to do it by themselves. They can do it as a group, but they can also at the high school level do it individually as well. It's just up to the teacher on what you know your students best, so you know what they're able to accomplish within these 10 lessons individually versus collectively. So of course the choice is yours. So if it's a group, then put everyone's name. If they're just by themselves, just their name. You name the issue, define the issue, and identify the impacted community. Provide data about the issue and its root causes and how it impacts the community. Also, That data should include primary and secondary quantitative data, so graphs and charts from when they did their primary and secondary research, but also primary and secondary qualitative data, so quotes or common experiences that they found in the interviews and also in their online research. They want to make sure they display some of that information, not everything, but the most important pieces that will help to really get people to understand the issue, understand the root causes, understand solutions. That's the information that you want to make sure that young people have on their poster boards when it comes to the data. And then students should share the action that they've taken to impact a root cause of the issue, as well as the results of the action taken. And so that's why it's so important up here for them to do that reflection where they talk about the outcome. They want to talk about that when they're presenting their research as well. And then they want to make a call to actions for the community to further their cause. So their call to action probably has already been figured out with their PSA, but some students may also have a different call to action that they want to make to the community. Again, they may have a petition that they're going to give to the president or to the prime minister or to whomever they know has the power to make change. If they're doing a petition, and they may be asking people at the expo to sign the petition. They may have a website that they've created, and they may ask people to check out their website. They may have social media that their PSA may be on social media, and they're asking people to scan a QR code to access their video, to share, to like their video, to share, to subscribe to their channel, etc. So again, the choice is the students, but they definitely a mandatory piece of their presentation is to have a call to action for the community to help further their cause. All right. And then with peers, ask students to practice presenting their action-based research and giving a call to action in preparation for the school community advocacy project expo. All right. So it's very important for them to practice up front. That's going to help them to not be as nervous. All right. And I do have some resources on this as well. And so you'll find a video on how to present your community advocacy project at the expo. You'll also have resources on the GACB website, the nonprofit website around the expo and preparing for the expo. All right. So that is it for the 10 lessons. I just want to share in these community engagement ideas. And this is around the ways that the students and the community partners can engage with each other. So as guest speakers, community partners can discuss their advocacy efforts and community contributions. They can have students write a short summary of what they've learned from the guest speaker. Okay, so this is one way. If a community partner comes in as a guest speaker, this is how the students can engage with them. Community partners can collaborate with students to help them better understand the root causes of an issue, how it impacts communities, and how they can advocate for change. Community partners can take surveys and be interviewed for students' data collection. Community partners can watch students in class, their in-class presentations and their expo presentations. Students can visit an organization that advocates for change. So if you have an organization that's focused on changing an issue, you have a civil society organization, invite students to come and check it out so that they can learn more and see advocacy in action. Students can visit an organization that specifically addresses their issue. Community partners can create a video discussing a general or specific topic for students to view. So as a community partner, even if you can't come in, you can create a video and send it to the teacher so that the teacher can show it to students. And also, finally, students can volunteer in the community or with an organization. And so again, if you're a community organization and you have an opportunity for students to be able to volunteer, please, and let the teachers know, please let the students know so that they can join in on furthering a cause. So I'm not going to read through these resources, but I just want to bring your attention to them again, that there are additional youth advocacy resources that students can use. And I want to also just show you this particular document. So really quickly, these are the 10 lessons that we just went through. And what this document shows is the roles that educators, students, and community partners play in the community advocacy project. So of course, the educator is a facilitator and a guide throughout the entire process. So that part is the same. And then they plan and prepare, plan and prepare for the expo itself, specifically um, for the expo. And so when it comes to that point, the educators can definitely reach out to me so that we can discuss that in more specific detail. The real purpose of this session is to go through the curriculum itself, but we will definitely talk about the expo as we move closer towards that date. All right, for students, these are the things. I'm not going to read through everything, but it's just the steps that I just finished going through. Okay, so they identify the community, write summaries, collect data, create PSA, take action, and prepare and present their presentations. All right, as community partners, you can definitely be a thought partner throughout the process. That's a tongue twister. Throughout the process, but then there are certain times, certain lessons where you can do even more. So like in lesson 3, you can provide sources of information for students. Lesson 4, you can co-create surveys with them, identify ideal survey takers, as well as take the survey. For lesson 5, you can co-create interviews, identify ideal interviewees, another tongue twister, and be interviewed. For 6, you can collaborate with them to create PSAs. For lesson 7, you can invite students to join you in things that you're already doing as an advocate, if it's connected to their issue, or you can even create a collective effort. So you all do something together, or if the student is doing something and they invite you to just be a part of what they're doing, that's another way of collaborating with the student. And so, again, you just continue to take collective action with the student. And for lesson 10, you can help with their poster board development, but you can also, if they need to practice, of course, they need to practice presenting. And so you can be a part of that audience when they practice their presentations. But then, of course, please, please, please don't participate in just the curriculum part, but absolutely show up to the expo, attend the expo, learn from the students, ask questions, and answer calls to action. All right, so this concludes my presentation and my instruction on how to use the Community Advocacy Project curriculum. We are at 8 o'clock on the dot, but if you are able to stay around and you have questions, now is the time to ask questions. So you can unmute your mic or raise your hand. And I just want to say thank you all for taking the time to learn about the Community Advocacy Project, for expressing interest in supporting young people in helping their communities through the use of their academic skills, their 21st century skills, and their third millennium skills. And I look forward to coming to the expos to see the young people in action. I look forward to seeing the community in action with the young people. And so if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm just going to also look in the chat.